Okie dokie. So we are probably going to see some more people start coming in now that it is 11 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and start chatting about our topic for today. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you to the Nevada Humane Society for hosting this session and for all of the great work that you guys do with cats and kittens and in your community. I want to let everybody know that I do have the chat open. So if you have something that you'd like to say, you can talk in the chat. If you have a question, I would love for you to put the question into the questions, into the Q&A. That's where I'll be pulling questions from later. I will do questions at the end. So we'll have time to chat about any questions that you have then. But for now, what I'm going to do is talk for about 20 minutes just through our question of what do you do when you find a kitten outside? And then we'll have an opportunity to speak with two foster coordinators for Nevada Humane Society about how you can help them locally. And I know that we still do have some folks coming in, so hopefully people can all get in quickly, but we'll go ahead and move to I have a question for you guys, which you can put your answer in the chat. And my question is, have you ever found a kitten outside? I always like to hear people's answer to this because that's how a lot of us get started in animal welfare. I got started when I found a kitten outside. If you've ever found a kitten outside, tell me about it in the chat. Where did you find them? So the reason that I think this is such a huge topic of conversation right now is that, you know, we're in kitten season right now. It's the time of year where lots of people are finding kittens outside. And it's important for shelters and rescues and people in animal welfare to have a quick answer to give of what should you do if you find a kitten outside. I've seen a lot of people try to really simplify that and either say, you know, if you find a kitten outside, scoop them up and foster them. Or if you find a kitten outside, leave them where they are because mom knows best. But the truth is, there's not one correct answer for this question. It really is circumstantial. It depends on so many different factors. It's just a complicated thing to answer. So that's why we wanted to do a quick session to talk through what those different circumstances might look like and how you can make the right judgment call, what considerations you need to take. It looks like a lot of people are saying, yes, they've found a kitten outside. A bunch of you have. So maybe some of you have already found yourself in this predicament of, you know, do I take the kitten in? Do I bring them to the shelter? Do I leave them where they are and hope that mom is around? So we're going to talk through all of that. But the first thing that's important to put in context is just that most kittens that are born in the United States are born outside. It's really important for people to realize that when you find a kitten, you're not just finding a kitten. When you find a kitten, you should be thinking, oh, I'm finding a family. There's very likely to be a family group where you're finding kittens because, of course, kittens don't just drop out of the sky. They are there because there's probably a mama around. Maybe there's a papa around. Maybe there's uncles and cousins and aunts. And, you know, there can be quite a few cats around. And so when we find a kitten outside, we want to be thinking really big picture. Obviously, we want those cats to be sterilized so that we're not having so many kittens being born. But in the short term, when we find a kitten outside, we really want to be thinking, okay, this kitten is here. There's probably a mom. How are we going to reunite this kitten with mom and what are we going to do next? So very important for people to understand that when you find a kitten, you really are finding a family. So how do we know what we're supposed to do? I created something that I call the CASA method. This is just like a simple little cheat sheet of the types of factors you should be considering when you find a kitten outside, because all of these things are going to dictate how I would tell you to respond. The first is C, condition, the condition the animal is in. Then A is age, how old are they? S is the specific situation, the circumstances that they are in. And then A is your ability or the resources in your community. What are you actually, what's feasible for you to do yourself, or what resources are available in your community? So what I want to do is walk through this. And if this is a helpful way of thinking about it for you, I have a poster you can download. It's just kittenlady.org/CASA. And you can download this poster, hang it up, give it to your friend, whatever you need to do. But we'll walk through each of these one by one. So the C is condition. So when you find a kitten, you want to ask yourself, is this kitten in good condition or is this kitten in bad condition? Good condition looks kind of like this. They're clean and alert. They're chunky and well fed. This kitten is like shaped like a little potato. That's a kitten in good condition. This kitten is not in distress. They're, if they're being quiet and they're just kind of resting where they are, probably mom's right around the corner. I always like to picture when you're hovering over the kittens you find outside, mom is probably around the corner looking at you going, I can't wait until that lady leaves so I can come back to my babies. And you're standing there going, why isn't mom here? Well, mom might not be there because you are there. She's waiting for you to leave. So if you find a kitten who's in good condition, someone is caring for them, and it's not like the local raccoon population, it's the mama cat. So, thank your lucky stars if you find a kitten who looks like this, because if they're clean, mama's licking them to keep them clean. If they're chunky, mama's feeding them to keep them chunky. In these situations with a kitten who's in good condition, we really want to be thinking about keeping them with mama most of the time. Here's an example of a kitten in good condition. When somebody brings me a baby like this and says, they don't have a mom, I'm like, well, why do you think they look so good? Of course they have a mom. They wouldn't look this good if they didn't have a mom. This kitten's clean. He's young for sure, so he's not taking care of himself. He's got a soft, round belly. He's not sick. This is a kitten who has a mama, so I'm going to take extra steps to try to find the mama and reunite. Sorry, I'm just going to plug in here. So what about kittens who are in bad condition? A kitten who's in bad condition, that can look a couple different ways. They might be dirty or covered in waste. Mama cats will lick their young to keep them clean and also to stimulate them to go to the bathroom. So if a kitten is covered in waste, if they're really filthy, that might be more of a sign that mama's not caring for them. If they're visibly underweight, if they're in distress, if they're having a medical crisis, sometimes you might even find a litter of kittens where a couple of them have already passed away. In those situations, you might be thinking, okay, this does not seem like a mama is caring for these babies. You're going to be more quick to intervene. And it's a spectrum, right? Because sometimes it's very clearly an emergency where you're like, we got to scoop these kittens up right now and get them to the vet. Sometimes it's like, they don't look great, but maybe there's a mom. Maybe I'm going to hang around for an hour at a distance and see what's going on. But if a kitten is in very bad condition, they do need swift intervention. And those are situations where it might be appropriate to intervene. What does bad condition look like? This is just a kitten who was really dirty. This kitten was covered in bugs. This kitten was in a really not good situation, respiratory infection, very thin. Those are situations where it's a good use of our resources to intervene and help that animal. But again, it's a spectrum. So good condition, bad condition, which one is the kitten? And that's going to dictate how swiftly we're going to be intervening. Then we want to think about age, because their age really is important. And you don't have to know exactly what age they are, but I kind of lump them into categories. The first category is 0 to 5 week old kittens, or zero to like 4 to 5 weeks old, where they are definitely dependent on mom for nursing. How do you know if they're this age? They're going to be kind of uncoordinated. They're going to have either closed eyes or baby blue eyes. They're going to definitely be dependent on mama, and we want to keep them with mama. These are some examples of 0 to 5 week old kittens. Obviously, they look really different because some of these are, 1 week olds, and then we have our older kittens down here. But all of these kittens are dependent on mama. So if you find kittens who kind of look like they're in a little nest, in a little bundle. We want to keep those kittens with mom. If they are in good condition, especially, we can assume this is a little baby who has a mom who needs to stay with her. So these are just some examples of what they might look like. And then once they get towards the 5-week-old range, these are kittens who are going to look, a little bit more like a mini cat. They're playful, they're coordinated, they're able to walk and run. They're eating food independently. These kittens are in the perfect window for us to be socializing. Now, it depends on the circumstances, which I'm going to get to, but in many cases, it's going to be good to actually help these kittens, if you are able to intervene, get these kittens vaccinated, dewormed, socialize these kittens, prepare them for adoption. So when I find a kitten who's in this category, here's some examples. Let's say that I'm outside and I find these kittens down here. These are feral kittens, they're hissy, but these kittens are probably right around like 6 weeks old. And so when I find a 6-week-old kitten, I'm not thinking the same thing as I would when they're a little baby. I'm not thinking, oh, they need to stay with mom, she has to take care of them. I'm more thinking, wow, this is the great little window of time where I can help this kitten become friendly and adoptable. It's also the age where they need to have those first preventative veterinary care provided to them. So, you could give them their dewormers, their vaccination. And so in these situations, I am going to be more likely to just go ahead and scoop those kittens up, me personally, because I'm able to provide them the care. But it depends on your specific situation. So in general, 5 to 12-week-old kittens, I would say, if you're able to provide them foster care, you can go ahead and do that and then return to make sure that mom is spayed later. Now, when we get into our older kitten range, we get into our 12+ weeks. We're looking at, 4, 5, 6-month-old kittens. These are kittens who are a little bit harder to socialize. And certainly we would not want to put that expectation onto an animal shelter to bring them like a feral 6-month-old cat and say, here's this feral 6-month-old cat, go ahead and socialize them. In most situations, it's going to be recommended that these are cats who are good candidates for TNR, for getting them sterilized and returning them to their community if they are feral. If they're friendly, maybe a different story. But here's some examples of what they might look like. So these are really, cats who are sort of past what's considered the traditional socialization window, where it's easy to, it's easy within a couple of days to get them on track for adoption. And in some cases, they may never become adoption candidates, especially the older that they get. So for these cases, usually my plan of action would be, let's go ahead and make a plan to get a trap, to get a spay-neuter appointment, and make sure that we get those cats spayed and neutered, but not necessarily put them on track for adoption. So the age really, really is important to know when you're looking at kittens that you find outside. When someone says, I found a kitten, the first thing I'm going to ask them is, well, tell me about what they look like. Are their eyes open or closed? Are they running around, or are they curled up in a little ball that could fit in the palm of your hand? How big are they? Do they have teeth? What color are their eyes? If you're interested in learning more about how to tell the age of a kitten, I have a bunch of resources about that at kittenlady.org/age. But let's move on to the situation, because that also is going to dictate so much. Is it a safe situation or is it an unsafe situation? If it's a safe situation, maybe less urgent to intervene, right? So we know that the mom is nearby, if we know there's somebody there kind of like overseeing what's going on, maybe this is a kitten under a shed in someone's backyard, and they're like, listen, I'm happy to provide food to the cat. I can kind of keep an eye on what's going on. The weather is mild. That's not an urgent situation. If this is a young kitten and they're in a safe situation, generally we can leave them where they are until they're old enough to bring into the system. But if it's an unsafe situation, then that's different. You find a kitten in the middle of the highway, that's an unsafe situation. You find a kitten in a blizzard, that's an unsafe situation. Those are situations where we're going to be more quick to intervene. So ask yourself, you know, where is the kitten? Are they exposed to extreme weather or hazards, or do they have some shelter? Do they have a mom or a caregiver in the area? Here's an example of a kitten who I was doing some trapping, and I found these kittens in somebody's backyard, and the woman was like, "Oh yeah, no, I know. I've been taking care of the mom, and I like make sure that they're okay, and you know, I've been watching them grow up, and they're fine back there." And she was like, "I would love if you could come back when they're old enough to be spayed and neutered." But she was actually socializing them like in her backyard. She was playing with them, and I was like, "Wow, this is actually a really safe situation. Like, there's no reason to scoop that kitten up and put them into a shelter, or even necessarily to bring them into my home if they have a lot of the care that they need where they are." But of course, I wanted to make sure that when that kitten is old enough, that we get them vaccinated, dewormed, we get them spayed and neutered, and we get them on track for adoption. So this was a kitten that I did not scoop up. I kept in touch with the person and followed up later on. Whereas sometimes there's an unsafe situation. This is another cat that I found while I was trapping. That's just when you trap cats, you're gonna start finding kittens. But this was not a safe situation. This was like a 110-degree day in Texas, and the kitten was like within inches of a pool of water. And it was not a safe situation, weren't able to identify the mom, didn't feel like there was like shelter there for the kitten, and there was no caregiver there. And so in that situation, I didn't feel comfortable leaving that kitten behind. So this was one that we ended up intervening. So it's really case by case. You have to ask yourself about the situation. But arguably the most important thing to ask yourself is about your specific abilities, because you know, animal shelters, they want to help you. That's what they're there for. But we have to keep in mind, shelters have limited resources, time, staffing, volunteers. And so we want to use the community resources to the best of their ability and with the cases that really, really need it. So in general, the more you're personally willing to do, the more likely I would be to encourage you to intervene. So you want to ask yourself, like, you know, are you or someone you know able to personally provide foster care to that animal? Because if so, then I'd be more likely to say, okay, let's scoop the whole family up and you can foster the whole family. If not, then maybe I'll say, let's leave them there until they're a little older, more manageable for the shelter to handle. Does your shelter have a program that works with this population? Can you access sterilization services? Ask yourself, you know, what can you personally do and what can your community do? Because like I said, the goal really is to use the very limited resources that we have in our communities to the best of their ability. So to that end, it's important to know your local community. And if you're in here, I assume you probably are already, you care enough to be here on a Saturday. So hopefully you care enough to be involved with your local shelter, but get to know your community resources. You know, sometimes there are cases where I'm like, that is something that I can do. And sometimes there are cases where I'm like, that's not something I can do, but I know a resource that I can connect that animal to. Now, when we talk about finding babies outside and we want to reunite them with mom, what does that look like? When we want to reunite kittens with mom, we're really kind of asking ourselves, are we doing this so that we can reunite them and place them into a foster home? Or are we reuniting them just so that we know mom is there and we're going to return later? I would say, and I'll ask this of Carly and Leora, but you know, it depends on your local community whether or not they have, you know, an abundance of resources to take care of feral moms and babies. Typically, that's not something that there is an abundance of foster homes for that. But I will say, I love doing it. It's really fun. And so I would recommend, if you are in a situation where you know, it's not a safe situation for the kittens, but there is a mom cat, then maybe you do want to consider trapping. And this is what that looks like. Babies are in the blue carrier. And then I put a trap up against the side of it, and mom is able to walk into the trap to try to go find her babies. And then she gets trapped, and I can bring them all into foster care and reunite them. But just know that if you do that, I would really only recommend that if you personally are willing to foster them rather than bringing them all to the animal shelter, unless, Carly, you have a different opinion on that.
I mean, we have a lot of foster families, and we have a lot of people willing to try fostering feral mamas. I think it's one of the easier situations, even if it's a little intimidating, but I think that we have a lot of support. So
okay, well, that's great. So yeah, and I mean, maybe this is something that you want to call and ask, like, hey, I have a situation where I found some kittens, and there's a feral mama, and I think I can get the whole family, but if I bring them in, is that something you guys have the capacity for right now or not? And the answer might change depending on the season. You know, there are times where there's an abundance of foster parents, and there's times where there's an abundance of foster kittens, and it just depends. But that is an option, and I agree 100% with Carly, what Carly just said about it being a really one of the easier things to do is fostering a feral mom and babies. I do have a video about that on YouTube if you're interested in learning about that. I think it's called 10 tips for fostering a feral mom and babies or something. But then this is the other option that I really want to encourage people to explore if you find kittens and they're healthy and they have a mom. This was a case from about 2 years ago that I did where one of my friends who did not have a barn cat, but she had a barn, was like, oh my gosh, a cat just found my barn and gave birth in the barn. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I went over there, and beautiful babies, very healthy, chunky, clearly have a mom. Here's the mama. She was feral, obviously. And in that situation, I was like, I just don't see any reason to scoop them all up. You know, she was willing to feed the mom. She doesn't want to come to my house. And they had shelter. You know, they had the barn. She was able to supervise. And so in that situation, I was like, you know what, we're going to leave them where they are. Let mama do her thing for a couple of weeks. And then we can return later. And this is them later. So I did end up fostering those kittens, but I waited until they were over 5 weeks old. So they were weaned. I got them in, we dewormed them, vaccinated them, all of that, and they got loving homes. And the mom is actually still a barn cat there. So there's a lot of different types of situations. And I know that this can sound very complicated, but I think it is complicated because every single situation is different. So this is the way that I like to kind of explain where my mind is when I find a kitten. What are the things that I think through? So I want to say first, thank you to everybody for being in this session and wanting to think through these different scenarios. Really, ultimately, the goal is to, you know, preserve the precious resources we have of the time of our foster coordinators and our foster parents, and, you know, the limited money and supplies that organizations have. And we want to be helping every single kitten, but sometimes it looks like waiting, sometimes it looks like intervening right away. If you want to learn more about kitten care specifically, kittenlady.org is my website. I have a book called Tiny But Mighty. I have a ton of webinars and videos and things like that that would be helpful. But the last thing that I wanted to do right now is kind of talk through Nevada Humane Society's foster program. And this is their resource of what to do if you find kittens. And I actually really love it. Sometimes I don't love flowcharts because sometimes I think they're like way too simple, but what I love about this is that it starts with, are the kittens visibly sick or injured? And if so, then nothing else matters, just help the kitten, right? If that's the case, then nothing else matters, let's intervene. But if they're not, if they're healthy, then we're thinking through, how old are they? You know, and then I see even, are they in danger? You know, and so it's really the same type of thinking, and thinking like this is going to help us preserve our resources and do things in a way that's really good. So thank you for you guys for having such a great resource for your community. I want to turn it over a little bit to Carly and Leora for a moment. to talk about fostering and kitten programs in Reno and Carson City areas, and where you guys serve. Can you guys talk a little bit about, you know, what's going on with kittens where you are and what kind of help do you need?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that. That was a really great explanation of the comprehensive thinking that goes into what to do if you come upon a kitten, which this time of year is very common. We encourage our community members to think critically when they come upon a kitten and decide if that situation is safe or unsafe and if they need to intervene. Our foster program here at Nevada Humane Society sends out over 2,500 animals a year on average. And that's pretty much almost entirely orphaned kittens found in our community. And we know they don't come from the sky. So it is important to think, where is mama, and what we can do to help all of the cats in that area as opposed to just the kittens.
Yeah, for sure. So how can people help beyond just fostering? Are there supplies that you guys need? Are there, what kind of support can people give you?
We are always in need of supplies. It actually costs the shelters $3,500 every month just to feed all the kittens we have in care at any given time, which is crazy. So one of the most important things that you can do for us, if you're not able to foster and you're not able to volunteer, we actually do have a wish list on our website that I would love to share with you. And it's going to show you exactly what we have the most need of. So I want to show
I wonder if you can
you.
pop it in the chat.
Yes, absolutely.
Ooh.
So it's going to be NevadaHumaneSociety.org/kitten-fostering. And I did just post that in the chat.
Awesome.
Oh, just kidding. There we go. You can feel free to click on that link. And right here, we actually have the page up. And if you scroll down, it will give you the option to volunteer to foster, but also we do have an Amazon wish list. And this is going to show you what the actual items are and how we use them. So the first thing that we always have the most need of is a snuggle safe disc. So we can use rice socks and heating pads, but those aren't always the most safe. Snuggle safe discs can go into the microwave. You have this nice little cover on them and they stay warm for a really long time. So they're an awesome resource for our foster parents. Also, miracle nipples are called miracle nipples for a reason. A lot of orphan kittens, you know, especially if they're very young, can have issues eating with the larger nipples, and these are very small. They already have the perfect size hole cut in them, so it's very stress-free and can help save a lot of lives that maybe otherwise would have difficulty taking care of. And the last thing that we ask for the most often is a food scale. Weighing kittens is a really, really important part of caring for them. Weight loss or lack of weight gain is one of the most important ways to gauge the health of your kittens. So you want to continuously be weighing them to make sure that they're staying healthy. And this is something we would really love to provide to all of our fosters when they start fostering for us.
Yeah, I love that. I agree 100%. I use all three of those products. And if I was to tell somebody some of the essential things you could gift that would always be helpful for a shelter, those would be some of them. So that's in the chat right now. So I already clicked on it and I'm on your wish list right now. So I hope that some people will, you know, even if you're watching not from, if you're not local to Nevada, you can send them a gift, which I think would be a really, really powerful thing for all of us to do right now. It's kitten season. They really need the help. Kittens need the help. If you're here, you care about that. So let's all send them some love in that way. So should we move on to some questions?
Sure.
Okay, so if you have a question, please pop it into the Q&A. And I will start answering some of them. So the first question is from Diana. What if instead of finding the kittens, you find an injured or dead cat in the road and you know that they're nursing? And you might know that they're nursing, you know, you can tell from their belly, if there are like kind of swollen teats, if it looks like they've been nursed on. Should you search for the kittens, or is it impossible to find them? I say absolutely, definitely. If you find a cat who seems to be nursing and is in distress or is injured or is, you know, deceased, definitely you should search for the babies. Kittens, depending on how long that's been going on, are likely to be quite loud if they are in distress, and if they are still, you know, able to vocalize. So I would be definitely looking around that area. Cats actually don't have a huge amount of area that they roam. They, especially when they are nursing, they tend to stay pretty close by their babies. So something that is really good advice that applies to when you lose a cat, but also if you're searching for a cat who you know is in that area, is to look low and thorough and turn every stone rather than to go wide and broad. I think sometimes people kind of look around and walk many, many blocks, but I would say look within one block, but turn every stone, really like look in every crevice of where there might be babies, would be my advice. And also just listen, and listen at a time when there's less noise. You know, if you're in a big city, then, you know, sometimes it's going to be a little more quiet in the evening. You know, if the kittens are able to walk around and eat on their own, you might be able to you know, use a humane trap to catch them. But sometimes if they're, you know, truly a newborn, they're unlikely to go into a trap. But that is a good question. Okay, how do you know if a kitten or cat you find outside has rabies? I've seen a lot of your videos, but I haven't seen anything on rabies. Okay, that's a great question. So the answer is, you see in a lot of my photos, if I'm outside, I'm wearing gloves, and they probably look like really like I'm overdoing it. They're like raptor gloves, but there's a reason for that. And that's because I really believe in protecting yourself and also protecting the animal by using safety supplies. So the first thing I would say is you never should be just picking up random cats and kittens outside with your bare hands. You know, the most ideal situation is that you have a trap with you. Most of us don't have a trap with us all the time, and I understand that. And if it's an emergency situation, I know that you're going to want to scoop the kitten up with your bare hands anyway. So what I tell people is trap is number one. Number two is gloves. Number three, which is more likely because most people don't carry bite gloves and traps in their car, unless you're me or a couple of us probably do. Do you have a sweatshirt on? Do you have a picnic blanket in the back of your car? Do you have a beach towel in your bag? Whatever you have, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've taken a hoodie off and used it to scoop up a kitten, because the truth is you don't know what they have. Rabies is extremely serious, but also rare. So I don't want to say they don't have rabies, because maybe they could. It is a possibility, but I've personally never had I have personally never encountered a kitten with rabies, but it could happen. And it's one of many reasons why you want to use protection. The biggest reason to use protection when you're looking at kittens outside is just because kittens bite. You know, it's likely that you're going to get bit or scratched if you go randomly pick up an animal. And the thing that can happen is if they bite you, and I do care about you, but I care a lot about the kitten. If they bite you and they have to go on a bite quarantine, or they're suspected to have rabies, that could be a very, very dangerous, risky thing for the kitten. So in the interest of preserving our skin and the lives of these animals, just put some kind of protection between you and the animal. Gloves, hoodie, sweatshirt, something like that. Okay, and just a reminder, if you have questions, definitely put them into the Q&A. So I'm gonna try to answer as many as I can. Oh wait, I got it. Okay. Okay. So there's some kitten care questions. I'm gonna get to those next, but let me just see. Okay, this is a long one. It's Estefania. Recently trapped some kittens and mom. Mom is feral and started smacking the kittens the second night at home. What could have been the reason? I feel kind of bad. I was instructed to keep mom and kittens separate. She's a barn cat. It seemed though that we could not determine if mom is 100% feral. Okay, so one important thing is to know that like feral and friendly are not separate categories. It's a spectrum. So just like you can't say like, oh, your friend, is she nice or mean? Because your friend might be somewhere in the middle, just like cats might be somewhere in the middle. And feral is not a matter of being nice or mean. Feral just means they are unsocialized to humans. So there's really no such thing as like 100% feral, 50% feral. It's just kind of, you know, every cat has a different level of socialization and comfort around humans. And so my feeling is if a cat doesn't want to be around humans, my opinion is we should not be forcing cats to be around humans if they don't want to be around humans. So the only time that you'll see me force a cat to be around humans who doesn't want to is if there's some reason why I need to have them in my care, either for their health, you know, caring for them after a surgery or something like that, or if they have babies and I'm fostering the whole family. And when I'm doing that, I'm trying to be as respectful of that cat as possible, give them as much space as possible. In your situation, you know, you're saying mom started smacking kittens. Just like human moms are variable, so are cat moms. There are some situations where the kittens have a mom, but the mom doesn't want to be a mom. You know, that does happen. And that's good to observe and intervene if you need to. Hopefully we can try to reduce the stress of the mama. So I would say ways to reduce her stress would be make sure she's in a room with no other animals around, not a lot of loud noises. You know, you can keep her in like a large dog crate with put a blanket over it, so there's not like visual stimuli. You're not going in there and, you know, singing Disney songs to her, trying to get her to become friendly. You're just kind of like respecting her space until her babies are old enough to not need to nurse on her anymore, and then you can spay and return her. That would be my advice. But you say, you know, she's 1.5 years old, wondering if she has a chance to come around a bit more. I really highly personally recommend not putting your energy there. That cat can't wait to get back outside. If she's a feral cat, she is like gonna be so excited to live her best life as she was. But just make sure she's spayed. And I think it's a really loving thing that you're doing. I think, you know, we all gotta use our energy to the highest good, and that's what I would recommend is, you know, get the kittens weaned and let mom return to her life where she's gonna be able to be happiest. So, okay, let's see. We've got a couple more questions. Can kittens from the same litter who've been apart for a few years be reunited with their mother or each other, or do you need to reintroduce? They're not gonna, yeah. I sometimes I have adopters who are like, we should get the whole family back together a year later so they can like reunite. It's not like that. The cats are gonna be like, I don't know you, I don't like you. It would be surprising to me if cats wanted to have a family reunion if they haven't seen their family in a long time. So I would say if it's been a few years, treat that like a new cat introduction. Okay.
I would love for you to answer this one question from
Sure.
Zoe. Yeah.
Sure. Zoe, I'm 10. I'm getting ready to start fostering with my mom. What advice do you have for me? Zoe, you're so cool. That's awesome. I wish I started fostering when I was 10 because I'd be like super, super, super foster parent now. I mean, I started when I was in my 20s, so that's awesome. My advice for you would be to talk to your mom about what tasks you can do and what tasks mom is going to do, and then what tasks you guys can do together. I don't know what age of kitten you're going to have, but there's a lot of fun things that you can do. Even as a 10-year-old, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. You can start making some soft beds. If you're crafty, you can create cat toys for the kittens to enjoy once they are old enough to enjoy them. What else would I advise? I mean, just go into it knowing that these cats are going to be somebody else's best friend, and you're helping them you know, get old enough to become somebody else's best friend. And I think it's important to remember that going in, so that you don't feel sad when they go away. Just like you can't wait to graduate, you know, elementary or middle school, the kittens, the whole point is to get them to graduate and move to their forever home. So I think you're going to be able to do some wonderful things to help them get to where they need to be. So thank you for doing that. It's amazing. Let's see if we have a couple other. And then there's another kind of similar, as a foster parent with several children, do you recommend that they help with socialization of the kittens? I think that that's great. I think that it's valuable for the child and for the kitten, especially if you can then say, you know, this is a cat who is friendly towards kids. That might be great for adopters to know. I would definitely not recommend putting children with a very feral kitten. I would work on that first, and then once they are a little bit more socialized, then you can have the child involved. But one thing that children can do, if you do have very feral kittens, is as long as they are not touching the kitten, they can read to them while they eat. And I'll tell you why that's really important, because when a kitten is eating, the kitten has all sorts of associations with, I'm eating, where did this food come from? It came from a person. Okay, that's going to make me like people more. So while they're eating, if they're feral, you want to be just kind of surrounding them in all that is human, so that they begin to associate food with humans. So it would be a great thing to let your kid kind of read a story every single time the kitten's eating. Have them read a book to the kitten, but I would not have them, you know, like touching a kitten who's super feral. It's good to start to teach children, you know, how to appropriately pet a kitten, and also how to tell if a kitten is consenting to be pet or not. Because if they're not, that's a really valuable lesson to teach kids, is, you know, how to assess, is this animal wanting me to touch them or not? And if not, then it's okay to just don't touch them if they don't want to be touched. Yeah. Okay, I'll take a couple more questions, and Leora and Carly, if there's any that you want to answer, or you see one that you really want us to discuss, feel free to call that out. Wow, we have a lot of young people in here. Nyla, awesome. How do you raise money for supplies if you're a kid? Well, I honestly, creating a wish list is a really, really great thing to do, and sending it out to everybody that you know, all of your friends, you know, teachers, people that you know in your community. You know, people want to help, and I hope everybody in this chat wants to help. I hope some of us have already maybe even sent some supplies to the Nevada Humane Society. Same goes for foster parents. You know, if there's something you need, ask around. But if you're a kid, you know, hey, do a lemonade stand, do a bake sale, create art. You know, I know a couple kids who make magnets or buttons or things like that they sell for $1 and raise money for their foster kittens. So there's definitely things that you can do. Are there any that you guys would really like me to answer? Some of these might take some time to discuss.
I think sibling suckling is a big one.
Yeah, so sibling suckling is where kittens suckle on each other instead of appropriately nursing on on a bottle and reserving their nursing behavior for that. They will suckle on each other. And that can be really dangerous, especially when they're targeting parts of the body that are very vulnerable to injury. So a lot of the times you will see them suckling on their male littermate genitals, and that can result in a lot of problems. So we want to avoid that. And when you see them suckling on each other, my advice is, if it's happening a lot, keep them separate. And I know everybody wants to say like, oh, put them in a sock, put a sweater on them, cover them in bitter apple. I have not, one, haven't seen a lot of success with that. And two, I really don't believe in like putting restrictive clothing on a baby, because for a lot of different reasons, we want them to be developing their bones and their muscles in a normal fashion, one. So there's some orthopedic reasons not to do that. And two, you know, if you are like covering them in something that's almost diaper-like when they're that young and they're still kind of maybe going to the bathroom on themselves, that could result in some skin infection type issues. I would not do that. I would definitely separate, and then you can have them together when you're doing a feeding or when it's supervised. You know, you can have them in your lap or on the table together, or, you know, for supervised periods of time. But it can be difficult for them to outgrow that behavior. So definitely I would separate.
And it can be really dangerous. Very
dangerous. Yeah, you can have bladder infections, you can have permanent structural damage to the genitals, you can have, yeah, like bacterial issues that happen, skin issues. It can be really not good. So if you see it happening, it's kind of just like, sorry guys, you're not allowed to be together for, you know, separate them for 5 days and then you can try again. And sometimes, you know, the suckling behavior is an instinct they're born with, and so their body is telling them, look, search for food, search for things you can suckle on. You know, that goes away as they are weaning. You know, the older they get, they will stop doing that eventually. It just might be when they're several weeks old. And you know, some kittens do still kind of like nurse on stuff, but it's not the same like actual suckling that is damaging when they're a little bit older. So fortunately, a lot of the socialization to humans and other animals happens during the weaning period anyway. So it's a little sad for them to be separate, but it's not going to damage them to be separated. It's actually going to be more beneficial in some situations. Okay, I'm happy to answer a couple more questions.
Perhaps we can talk about what information do you pass on to the adopters of your kittens? Do we want them to know about the quirks and the likes and the dislikes? Does that help them get a better home?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the beautiful things about fostering is that, you know, unlike having a bunch of kittens in a shelter setting where there's different people seeing them every day, when you're fostering, you know that animal really, really well, right? Because you see them in a home setting and you're seeing the same animal every day. So you can pass that information on in an adoption bio or at the time of adoption, letting people know a bit about that animal, and what they like and what they don't like and what they eat and what treats they love and what treats they don't love, and what kind of toys get them excited. When I do an adoption, I kind of go overboard. Honestly, I provide a lot of information. I always send my babies with their favorite toy or enrichment items. So if they had like a bed that they really loved, or you know, a toy they always carry around in their mouth, I'll just send it with them. But you don't have to do that. I mean, I'm in a fortunate situation where we have a wish list and we can generally replace things. So I like to be able to send kittens with stuff if they love something. I also send them home with some information about enrichment. You know, especially because, you know, the kittens that I'm adopting are going into indoor only homes. I want to make sure that they still have a very enriching life. So I send them home with information about harness training so they can go on safe outdoor exploration. information about clicker training if people want to do some like fun high fives with their cats. We send them home with information on cat behavior, stuff like that. But definitely knowing the individual is really important. And the other thing to know about kittens is they're flexible. That period of time, that like 5 to 12 weeks, is not just a socialization window. It's sort of, they're so flexible and adaptable to the world during that time period because everything's new to them. They're finding their place in the world. And so when people say, oh, is that 6-week-old kitten good with dogs? I'm like, a 6-week-old kitten could be good with a dolphin. Like, they don't know what's going on. If you introduce them to an elephant, I would not introduce a kitten to an elephant. I take that back. Let's do a different example. You could introduce them to a monkey, and they would probably acclimate to that during the 5 to 12 week period. However, you introduce a 1-year-old cat and they're going to be like, this is not in my realm of what I do and what I like. Please get away from me, right? So kittens are adaptable, which is another like good reason to kind of get them on track for adoption and get them so that they can, go into their home at a time when it's really easy for them to adapt. Anything else that we want to talk about? I could just keep talking forever. There's a lot of
good questions, and there's a lot of good information out there too. If you have questions, if you're local to Nevada Humane Society, you can always reach out to us. Kitten Lady has tons of resources on her website, tons of YouTube videos. There's a lot of information out there, so
yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And some of the questions I'm seeing, like, what do you do for ringworm? I have a lot of ringworm information out there. I think I have like 3 different ringworm videos. And I think if you go to kittenlady.org/ringworm, I have information there. But really, if you want to be working with kittens of any kind, feral kittens, ringworm kittens, tell your local shelter. Hopefully some of you, your local shelter will be Nevada Humane Society. You can work with Leora or Carly. And you don't have to know all this stuff because they will tell you, if you've never done a ringworm kitten and you're interested in that, you can be like, hey, Carly, I want to do ringworm kittens. And she's going to be like, yes. And then she's going to be like, I will give you all the supplies and like tell you what to do. And then you learn how to do that. And next thing you know, you're the ringworm lady, right?
Yep.
Every shelter needs a ringworm person or 2 or 10.
Yeah, the more the merrier.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, there's always more to learn, and there's a support structure there to help you. So I just want to say thank you again to you guys. And I want to encourage everybody again to please go to the Nevada Humane Society website. I am putting it in the chat again right now, nevadahumanesociety.org/kitten-fostering. And you can find information on there about kitten fostering. You can also find the wish list, which I'm going to send you guys something from because you certainly deserve that. So let's all chip in and help out in whatever ways we are able. And just thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today.
Thank you so much for doing this for us and with us.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, it's really nice hanging out with you guys. Hopefully we can get together IRL someday.
Someday.
All righty. Well, thank you. I hope everybody has a great Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.